Speaking of players coming out and saying things, did you see Eric Bailly's comment?
I did,
mate. What do you make of this in terms of the club should avoid favoriting English players and give everyone a chance? What do you think he actually meant by that directly?
That Ollie's a clown. But we've seen, I don't know if you've seen it today, Bernd Leno said that something similar. He didn't mention nationality of players, but he said there was a lot of politics in the dressing room, and I had to get out because it doesn't matter whether your performances are good or not. Players were playing.
Well, you've heard that.
I'm glad that these people are coming out and exposing this.
I think you'll get the same at Chelsea with some people towards Mason Mount. Listen, I agree with everything that Eric Bailly has said up until the point of the nationality being mentioned. I don't really like immutables coming into it because...
No, but he's right though, Terry. Harry Maguire, Luke Shaw, Wan-Bissaka, you've taken all three of them out and your defence looks half decent now.
No, what I mean is, though, is the broader term in it, because there was more than just those 2 to 3 players who were played too regularly when they were out of form. Fred is not English. Bruno Fernandes is not English, and they should have been taking out this team on a more regular basis. I mean, there's some that would argue that Paul Pogba, when fit, shouldn't have been playing either. Some United fans didn't like him. I think he's right. There was favourites. There was favouritism. There was the overuse of particular players. Marcus Rashford is another prime example of a player overused, underperforming as an example. So Bay's right in that. But it was a little bit of a dog whistle to people that think there is like an English bias as opposed to just favourites in general. But what I find funny is this about Bailly. He also has to take a look at himself, because Erik ten Hag's come in and hasn't gone, why haven't you been playing, Bailly? Come into the team. What he's actually turned around and done is because, again, Victor Lindelof was underperforming, but continuously was getting picked as an example, and he's not English. I do feel like Bailly should have been given more of a chance, but Bailly, when he did get opportunities, he just wasn't that much better than everybody else. So I feel there was a little bit that was underhand about him not playing.
Yeah, but let's be real. Even if he's bad, Terry, he is light years clear of Harry Maguire.
No, and I think that's an absolutely fair take. It's an absolutely fair take, and I understand the favoritism thing is an issue, and we've already seen Erik ten Hag 2 games in address that and drop Ronaldo.
Yeah, but I'll give an example. When Maguire came on the other day, he got the armband straight away. Yeah, when he came on the pitch, the first thing he did was push Jesus straight to the floor. All the Man United players were looking at him like, "What are you doing? You've literally just walked on the pitch." Yeah, he pushed him straight over and got a booking, free kick outside the box.
I think when both in foot, like, again, everyone's gonna have a difference of opinion. Some will say that Maguire is better than Bailly. Some will say Bailly is better than Maguire. I'm not really interested in that side of the debate. For me, I don't want it to go into that. It's about the favoritism element, and I think that Ollie went too far down that route. What I will say is this though about Bailly: he fell out of favour under Jose, and Jose wanted another centre-back on top of him because he didn't think he was good enough. Ollie didn't fancy him. Rangnick weren't playing him regularly. And Erik ten Hag came straight in and said, yeah, I want to get rid of him. So in terms of him moaning, and I get his view that he didn't get a fair crack at the whip, and that is a fair comment. But we're not talking about a centre-back who should have been at VVD's level and he just wasn't given the chance and he was ostracised. But there's definitely a problem at Man United, and there's definitely been a problem with that at Chelsea, and I think it will come out around favoritism. Players that are out of form getting more game time than other individuals, and I'm glad that Erik ten Hag at Man United has now addressed that. You've seen it, but dropping Ronaldo, dropping Shaw, dropping Harry Maguire have been some of the biggest decisions that's turned this round, because what you've then seen from the Scott McTominays, from the Rashfords is shit. I better perform because the captain's dropped. Luke Shaw, that never got dropped unless he was injured, is out the team. And Ronaldo. And the Liverpool game was a key factor for me. Not only was Ronaldo dropped, he wasn't the first attacking player subbed on. It was Martial. And the only reason that Ronaldo's come on in the last three games is because Martial's been injured again. And I think that's really telling. And
he doesn't like Ronaldo one bit, does he?
No, I think he just looks at him as a 37-year-old player that can't press and run how he wants.
Can't run anymore.
It's like I'm frustrated with Eric Bailly because I agree with like half of what he said, but the problem is when you start mentioning people's nationalities, race or religion in any kind of context, is you take it away from the actual subject matter and it becomes about something bigger. And equally, he should have been having to go Ollie only because he was the manager, and he should have just been, for me, he should have just been more blunt and said, I don't think Maguire should have been playing. Like, saying English players, it's like, well... Like,
I'm better than Maguire. Why was he playing every week?
I don't think he was talking about Jadon Sancho or Rashford or even AWB. I think he's talking about one person and one person only, and that's Harry Maguire in his position. And I would have just preferred him to have maybe addressed it and said that, you know, Man United shouldn't have favourites, even if you're the captain, even if you're one of the star players for your country. If you're not playing well, you should be dropped. That's a fair comment. But this whole, you should have a bias towards English players, like McFred are not English. They're Scottish and Brazilian, but they kept on getting played as an example. You know, and have you noticed like this? And this is the thing: all the same people brought into this notion of, oh, you know, Ollie was bullying Donny van der Beek. Why is nobody calling Eric Ten Hag a bully? He ain't picked him yet for a single game. He doesn't even bring him on straight away. Like, there's certain elements that like people will now use. I knew I'd write about this and about that. No, let's not let all these players off the hook. Some of them weren't good. Plus, I've got to get the stat right. In Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's first 600 days in charge of Man United, Axel Tuanzebe and Bailly, the two players that Man United fans wanted in the team more than Maguire and Thor, were injured for over 500 days combined. So you have to contextualize everything and not forget the facts of the matter. We had a big super chat that came in here that I don't want to ignore. Thank you so much for the donation from Gunner Down Under. He says, point I'm trying to make is that if a ref sees it live from a meter away and thinks not enough contact, he went down easy, minimal contact to fall like that, then I don't know what that means. They assess it from 10 angles to be able to confirm the contact matters. Now, I hear you, but this is my point. We don't know what they're saying to each other. So we don't know whether they're saying, was it minimal contact or did he win the ball? The referee says, well, I think it was like the contact was fair because he won the ball at the same time. They didn't win the ball. I've got it wrong then. Like, I'm not saying that's what was said, but we need to hear it because your point makes sense. If they said that, not enough contact, actually, I've re-looked at it, maybe there was now. I don't think that is a clear and obvious error, but we don't know what the error was because they never fucking tell us. They never tell us what they say. Even when they come out and admit they got something wrong, I'm like, yeah, but what were you actually told? What was being said in your ear? For me, if they did that, like in rugby, I don't agree with every decision I hear in rugby. I don't. But it makes more sense. And have you seen what they're doing in the Champions League now with they're digitalizing the offside decisions? Have you seen that now?
Like I didn't watch any of the games last night.
So what they do when it's offside, they don't show you the lines on the actual TV screen. They create, like tennis and cricket, they create like a digital version of where the ball went. Does that make sense? So, and I was saying that we were in the studio last night with Jess and went, see, if they'd have done that from the start, no one would have questioned whether things are offside. Have you noticed how, you know, like when it's pixelated, people go, oh, is the ball leaving the foot exactly then? Is it a little bit behind? When you see a ball just cross the line and it's pixelated because it's not very clear, no one says, yeah, well, that could be, you know, maybe there's a few millimeters of the ball that haven't crossed the line. We just go with the digitalized computer printout and no one questions it. Now they're doing it offside. Nobody will. All they have to do is do what they do with rugby. Let us hear what's being said. And I guarantee you 90% of decisions will not be challenged by the fans because the rationale will be there and we'll go, I understand. I might not agree, but I understand. I think that's what they need to do personally. Matt Law has tweeted and said that the recruitment analyst for Graham Potter's staff is set to join him at Chelsea. Well, if they're talking to the coaches and staff of Potter, that means to me that deal looks like it's pretty much done and dusted. Frankie here says, Terry and Lee, I was Thomas Tuchel in still, but if he lost the locker room, a common theme at Chelsea, do you think a laid-back manager is worth a shot? Not sure. So basically saying, could Graham Potter lose his dressing room?
No, hang on. No, he's saying if Tuchel has lost the dressing room and Tuchel is like fire, like always, he's saying, but Potter's more laid back. Do you think he's worth a shot? Yeah, I think that players nowadays, they're little babies. They cry about everything. Yeah, it's like they're it's not like what we grew up on, put it that way. And some players don't like being screamed and shouted at. Some players need an arm put around them. Some players, you have to be a man manager. You have to be a manager of 25 different players, and you can't treat them all exactly the same because then we've got different personalities and traits. So I don't know, man. Like, at the end of the day, they're all paid to do a job, and if they don't do it properly, they're getting sacked. It's as simple as that. Whether you're a player, you'll get sacked from that club and go somewhere else, or you're a manager, you get sacked and go somewhere else. So I think Potter's going to smash it. I can't lie. One thing's for sure. Yeah, he's got a decent squad. And he's going to have a load of money.
I agree with you on that. A question here says, Terry, if not for being British, How can you explain Maguire and Shaw being regular starters until recently for such a big club like Man United? Well, I'll just say Bruno Fernandes and Fred. They're not those guys. So this is my point to people. When it comes down to the group of people that were very vocal about Maguire and Shaw being dropped, a lot of them do not rate Bruno Fernandes either. A lot of people don't rate McFred as an example. And David De Gea is another prime example of a player people have been calling to be dropped for a long time. They're not English and they've maintained their starting berths. Now, yes, those players, Fred hasn't, by the way. So Fred, this is what's funny. People go, Shaw and Maguire being dropped are the reason we've improved. But by the way, Ronaldo, who was continually played by Ollie when he wasn't doing well, continually being played by Ragnick when he wasn't doing well. But Ronaldo and Fred have also been dropped, who are not British, and there's also been improvements. What people do is correlation and causation. Maguire and Shaw being dropped has been a contributing factor to us getting better, but so has been dropping Fred and Ronaldo. And on top of that, certain players that people also wanted kicked out the team, like Rashford, who is British, and Bruno, that isn't British, have maintained their place in the team and have improved. Their nationality is irrelevant. It's about who the manager favors. Like, that's what I'm saying. You can leave. I just don't believe it's right in almost any context. And you could probably deliver me a context where I would agree with it. But generally speaking, when you're reviewing a football player, talking about their nationality, their skin color, their religion, or their sexual orientation or gender is off limits. It's irrelevant. The passport doesn't
but Bailly should have just come out and said Harry Maguire. Let's be real. He should have just said it, Maguire. Just say it with your chest, mate. I'm better than Maguire. Just say it. But at the same time, I do. You're spot on with what you just said. But at the same time, me looking as an outsider, Rashford was garbage for you, Terry, and that three of that back four were garbage as well, and they were still playing. Like,
no, that element I agree with 110%. But then you get comments like this, Terry. You can't deny that Ollie had a British core. Goalkeeper was Spanish. half the centre back pairing was either Swedish or last year French. Half the midfield, we had three main midfielders being used. Actually, we had four midfielders being used. One Serbian, one French, one Brazilian, one Scottish. Who is our number 10? Bruno is Portuguese. Who have our last three number 9s been? A Frenchman, a Uruguayan, a Portuguese guy. So there's like the amount of Brits in that is less. It's crazy. People said that you only bought British players. The last time I looked at the stat, 70% of Ollie's signings were not British. Yes, he wanted a British core, but let me just say this to you now. Go back through the brilliant Barca teams, the brilliant Madrid teams, the brilliant Juve teams, or the good or bad. It doesn't even matter. There's always a fair percentage of Italian players in Italian teams, German players in German teams, British, even at City right now, Liverpool right now, they've got a fair amount of British players in. It's not weird. I'm not denying that I do not believe that Rashford was not dropped because he had a British passport. I believe he was not dropped because he was a favorite of the manager. I don't believe Bruno was kept in the team because he was Portuguese. It's because he was a favorite of the manager. The nationality is irrelevant, in my opinion, to a degree. And yes, a lot of clubs in England, when you go through the squads, there'll be a fair amount of players who are of British descent. Why does that happen? Well, because you're in Britain. And like the academies produce, like British academies produce predominantly British players, and they predominantly stay in England. The same as most Germans stay in Germany. Most Spanish stay in Spain. Most Italians stay in Italy. We're not the only country that does it. It's not weird. It isn't weird to me. I just think it's deeped far too much. And when you start talking about people's immutables, I find it's disconcerting to me. It tells me something else about your character, personally.
Smash the likes up, people.
By the way, sorry, I was being told there by KJ. Man United have only signed 4 English players in a decade.
4
English players. Yeah, like British, it might be a few more, but English. And this is the point for me. It's just kind of like it's just exaggerated to crazy levels. And then what happens is you then get certain Man United players attacked more because they're English. And then what you get is the reverse of that. And then a player that isn't English gets attacked more by another group of numpties. And it's like, let's just talk about the football and criticize them on their football and leave it there. Because I thought that's what we're meant to do. Not talk about people's nationalities, not be xenophobic. I just thought that was what I've been, since I was 5 years old, starting school, don't be xenophobic. In fact, before that, when I was at home, I don't know. It's mad to me. It
Look
annoys
at what Eric Bailly's caused, mate. Jesus Christ.
me.